The pressure is on. Nvidia will report its first quarter results next week. Expectations are high, and Nvidia's stock reaction post-earnings could make or break fellow chipmakers and the broader market for that matter. So can the semiconductor giant deliver? To discuss, we're joined by Matt Bryson, Wedbush Senior Vice President of Equity Research, and William Stein, Truist Securities Senior Analyst. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Matt, I'm going to start with you. Most of the research that I've been seeing out there thinks, well, even if they beat, the stock might not go up.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've seen in a few of the recent quarters, right? It's not Nvidia beating that moves the stock. Stock is flat to down a little bit. But having said that, then what you see is momentum 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks later as people digest the news and realize that there's been absolutely no slowdown in AI spend or demand for NVIDIA data center GPUs.
William, let's bring you in here as well, because like Matt, you are an NVIDIA believer. You got to buy on the name, William. When you're talking to clients and they ask you, what's kind of on your wall of worry for Jensen Huang's company, what the downside risks are, what do you tell them, William?
Well, sure. I think it's pretty clear if you look at the stock and the valuation at trading in the low 30s times calendar 25 earnings. It tells you that relative to the very fast growth that we've seen for this company over the last few quarters, it suggests that there's a downturn coming. And when you see lead times go from a year plus to less than half a year in a couple quarters, that's usually an indication that hey, customers have double and triple ordered. Now, perhaps we're going through a period where they get delivered and then suddenly, hey, I don't need any more for the next few quarters. And let's back off. We're going to cancel orders. And then you see a downturn. I don't think that's what's going to happen in the next year plus. I actually don't think it's going to happen through 24 or 25. I argue, very strongly against this view, but I think that's the worry. It's much less for this stock around, do they beat the quarter? I think certainly they're going to beat this quarter, and I think they're going to beat in the out quarter guide as well. But I think the real question is what happens through this year and into next year's numbers. Does the company give us an indication that we're going to continue to see growth and very strong demand both for units and for integrated systems where the company's getting the growth from?
Will, do you think there's any indication they won't continue to see that kind of growth?
Well, sure. The indication is there, right? And it's in the lead times having gone the other way, having shrunk in the last couple quarters. When I visited the company in September, they were telling us lead times were over a year. I hosted meetings with them at CES, and they were saying they're down to less than half a year. That sends signals to investors that, look, we're heading for a period of cancels and push outs and potentially negative revenue growth. We've seen that in this end market, in this data center end market, twice in the last 5 or 6 years. It is certainly going to happen again. I just don't think it's going to happen this year or next year for that matter. That's absolutely a concern.
And let's talk, guys, too, about AMD, because here we have a disagreement on the panel about that name, which makes things interesting. Matt, start with you, because you're bullish on AMD. How come, Matt? If you were to bullet point that thesis, what would it be?
It's simply AMD is the only alternative right now to NVIDIA. So I'm basically at little over $4 billion in data center GPU sales, going towards $10 billion next year. That's enough in my mind to support a $200 valuation for the stock. And you look at kind of the other indicators out there, like I see supercomputing as an early indicator of what trends are going to be in the general business environment. And there, AMD is the only other choice other than NVIDIA. So I think they do well in AI, if not as well as NVIDIA. But then I also think we're starting to see a pickup in standard server builds. I think they're gaining share there. I think that's a tailwind that will benefit them through 2024 into 2025 as well.
Will, as Josh alluded to, you've got a hold rating on AMD. Why are you not looking at that as another big, beneficiary of what's going on with AI demand?
This company is certainly going to generate revenue from AI with this MI300 product that they're ramping today. I think that's no doubt. But when I consider the longer term prospects for this company, we've got two problems. One is that, in my view, x86, the traditional core Intel compatible CPU market, is sort of a shrinking iceberg. And this is because of what NVIDIA is doing in the data center. They're getting customers to buy entire NVIDIA systems that are displacing this x86 standard that's been in place for many, many years. And the other issue is that in the AI world, what NVIDIA has, its advantage really has something to do with its chips, but not as much as one would perceive. The reality is that NVIDIA's position, its advantage in AI, is really owing to three different things. It's a culture of innovation, it's an ecosystem of incumbency, and it's a massive investment in software, services, and pre-trained models now. It's especially that services and software bit that's super important. There's a massive 4 million person large community of trained CUDA developers. These are developers that develop to NVIDIA's systems. If AMD has 400,000, a tenth of what NVIDIA has, I would be gobsmacked. Right. That is the advantage NVIDIA has. It's very, very difficult for AMD to build against that, in my opinion.